The boardroom felt suffocating as I sat across from Michael, my husband of 15 years, and Victoria, his supposed business partner. The irony of that title wasn't lost on me. Partner indeed, just not in the way the company records showed. Sarah, Michael began, his voice carrying that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. We called this meeting because there are going to be some changes in company structure. He straightened his tie, the blue silk one I'd given him for our anniversary last year. Victoria and I have acquired majority shares. We're shifting the direction of the company. I kept my face carefully neutral, years of practice helping me maintain my composure. Is that so? I asked, my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. And how exactly did you manage that? Victoria smirked, her red lips curving up at the corners. At 32, she was a decade younger than me, all sleek blonde hair and calculated ambition. Through perfectly legal channels, of course, she purred. The shareholders agreed it was time for new leadership. What they didn't know, what I'd spent the last year carefully hiding, was that I'd seen this coming long before they'd made their move. The late-night strategy meetings, the suspicious transfers, the way they both looked at me like I was already gone. I'd noticed it all, but unlike them, I'd learned the value of patience. I see, I said, opening my laptop. And these would be the shares transferred through offshore accounts in the Caymans, or the ones filtered through shell companies in Singapore. The confidence in Michael's expression flickered slightly. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his left eye twitched, the same tell he'd had since we first met in business school. I turned my laptop around, displaying a spreadsheet filled with transaction records, dates, and amounts. Let me refresh your memory then. Victoria's smirk vanished. Where did you get those? That's not important, I replied, closing the laptop. What matters is that I have them, along with every email, every document, and every piece of evidence showing how you two have been embezzling from the company for the past year. Michael stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You're bluffing, he snapped, but I could see the fear creeping into his eyes. You can't prove anything. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Actually, I can. You see, while you two were busy planning your little takeover, I was building a case. Everything's here, the fraudulent transfers, the falsified board minutes, even those interesting messages you two exchanged about your plans for me once you took control. Victoria grabbed Michael's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. She's lying, she hissed. She can't have all that. But I wasn't lying. I'd spent months gathering evidence, working with forensic accountants and private investigators. Every late night Michael spent with Victoria, I'd spent building my defense. Every secret meeting they held, I documented. Every dollar they thought they'd cleverly hidden, I traced. Would you like to know what else I found? I asked, enjoying the way they both flinched, like how you've been padding construction contracts through Victoria's brother's company, or the interesting conversations you've had with certain board members about kickbacks. Michael sank back into his chair, his face ashen. Sarah, we can talk about this, he started, adopting the soothing tone he used when he thought he could manipulate me. We're still family. I laughed then, a genuine sound that seemed to startle them both. Family? Is that what you call it when you plot to steal your wife's company? When you sleep with your CFO and plan to push me out of the business I built? Yes, I built. While Michael had been the face of Reynolds Construction, I'd been the one working behind the scenes, securing contracts, managing relationships, building our reputation. He'd been too busy enjoying the perks of success to notice that most of our major clients dealt exclusively with me. The board won't believe you, Victoria said, but her voice wavered. We have their support. Do you? I asked, pulling out my phone. Because I just got off a call with James Harrison. I watched their faces pale at the mention of our largest investor. He was very interested in the documentation I sent him this morning, as were the other board members. The silence that followed was deafening. I could almost see the wheels turning in their heads, calculating options that no longer existed. You're both done here, I said quietly, standing up. Security is waiting outside. They'll escort you to clear out your offices. Your access to all company systems has already been revoked. You can't do this, Michael spluttered. I'm the CEO. Not anymore. I walked to the door, then turned back to face them. Oh, and Michael, I've already called my lawyer. Expect divorce papers this afternoon. Victoria HR will be in touch about the terms of your termination. As I walked out, I heard Victoria's angry whispers and Michael's desperate attempts to salvage their plans, but it was too late. While they'd been plotting their takeover, I'd orchestrated their downfall. Outside the boardroom, I nodded to the security team waiting in the hallway. They moved past me, entering the room I'd just left. I walked to my office, closed the door, and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. My marriage was over. The carefully constructed life I built had crumbled. But as I looked out over the city skyline from my office window, I felt something unexpected: relief. The pretending was finally over. No more smiling through dinner parties while knowing my husband was sleeping with our CFO. No more watching them whisper in corners at company events. No more waiting for them to make their move. My phone buzzed. A text from James Harrison. Board meeting scheduled for 3 p.m. Full support confirmed. You're doing the right thing, Sarah. I smiled, picking up the family photo on my desk. Me, Michael, and our golden retriever Max from happier days. I dropped it in the trash, frame and all. Let them think they'd lost everything in one dramatic showdown. They didn't know that this was just the beginning. I had more evidence, more plans, and absolutely nothing left to lose. The real game was just starting, and I intended to win. The weeks following Michael and Victoria's removal from the company were a whirlwind of damage control and restructuring. Every day brought new discoveries of their deception: hidden accounts, falsified contracts, promises made to clients that we'd never be able to keep. But I was prepared. For each problem they created, I had a solution ready. Every client they tried to turn against me received personal visits, complete with documentation showing how Michael and Victoria had been skimming from their projects. James Harrison proved to be an invaluable ally. As our largest investor, his support carried weight with the board. I always knew there was something off about those two, he told me over lunch one afternoon. The numbers never quite added up. The divorce proceedings started quickly, with Michael hiring the most aggressive attorney he could find. Bradley Thompson, known in legal circles as the Shark, arrived at our first meeting with a smug confidence that reminded me of his client. Mrs. Reynolds, he began, spreading papers across the conference table. My client is willing to be generous despite your recent actions. He's offering you the house and a very fair settlement in exchange for your company shares. My lawyer, Diana Chen, didn't even look up from her notes. That's interesting, she said, her voice dry. Considering those shares aren't up for negotiation. Be reasonable, Thompson pressed. Mr. Reynolds built this company from nothing. Surely you don't expect to keep control after what you've done. I couldn't help but laugh. What I've done? You mean exposing fraud? Preventing embezzlement? Please enlighten me about my crimes. That's when I pulled out my own stack of papers. Bank statements, emails, hotel receipts spanning the last 3 years. While we're discussing generosity, perhaps we should talk about these. Michael's lawyer paled as he scanned the documents. The evidence was damning, not just of the affair and financial misconduct, but of something far more serious. Hidden in those records was proof that Michael and Victoria had been planning this for years, systematically weakening the company's position to buy shares at deflated prices. This is blackmail, Thompson sputtered. No, Diana corrected smoothly. This is documentation that will be included in our countersuit. Your client didn't just cheat on his wife. He conspired to defraud shareholders and potentially violated several SEC regulations. The meeting ended shortly after that, with Thompson gathering his papers with shaking hands. As they left, I heard him hissing at Michael in the hallway. You told me this would be simple. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you're in? But Michael had bigger problems than an angry lawyer. That afternoon, Victoria turned up at his penthouse apartment, the one he'd moved into after I'd changed the locks on our house. She wasn't alone. The SEC is investigating us, she shrieked, according to my private investigator who was still monitoring them both. They're looking into every transaction we made in the last 5 years. What did you do? Me, Michael shot back. This has your fingerprints all over it. Those offshore accounts were your idea. Their argument lasted hours, growing increasingly bitter as they realized the depth of their situation. By nightfall, Victoria had packed her bags and disappeared, leaving Michael to face the storm alone. I watched it all unfold from my office, receiving regular updates as their carefully constructed world crumbled. The board had called an emergency meeting, shareholders were demanding answers, and our competitors were circling, hoping to capitalize on the chaos. But I was ready. The reorganization plan I'd spent months preparing was already in motion. Key employees had been briefed, strategic partnerships were being strengthened, and a new executive team was taking shape. "You're handling this remarkably well," James commented during one late-night strategy session. Most people would have cracked under the pressure. I looked up from the contracts I was reviewing. Most people haven't spent a year preparing for this exact scenario. He nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You knew. All along, you knew what they were planning." "I knew Michael," I corrected. "I knew his patterns, his tells, the way he acts when he thinks he's cleverer than everyone else. The same arrogance that made him think he could get away with this is what made him so predictable." "And Victoria?" I smiled grimly. Victoria made the mistake of underestimating me. She saw what she wanted to see, the devoted wife, too trusting or too stupid to notice what was happening right under her nose. The truth was, I'd spotted Victoria's ambition the day Michael hired her. Fresh out of business school, she'd arrived with impressive credentials and an agenda. I'd seen the way she looked at Michael, at his position, at the life I had. She wanted it all, and Michael's wandering eye made him an easy target. What neither of them realized was that while they were playing checkers, I'd been playing chess. Every move they made, I'd anticipated. Every scheme they hatched, I'd documented. Every ally they thought they'd turned, I'd secured. Now, as the consequences of their actions caught up with them, I found myself in a strange position. The company was stronger than ever. Our client relationships were solid, and my personal life, though different, was finally free of lies. But something was still bothering me, a loose end I couldn't quite ignore. Among all the documents I'd discovered, there was one transaction that didn't fit the pattern. A large sum of money transferred to an account I couldn't trace just days before everything came to a head. What were they planning? And more importantly, what hadn't I uncovered yet? That mysterious transaction kept me awake at night. $2 million transferred through a series of shell companies ending at an untraceable account. It wasn't Victoria's style. She preferred simpler schemes. This had Michael's fingerprints all over it. I was reviewing the transaction records again late one evening when my assistant rushed in. "Mrs. Reynolds, you need to see this." She handed me her tablet, open to a business news website. The headline made my blood run cold. "Reynolds Construction Rival Announces Surprise Acquisition of Major Government Contract." The contract in question was one we'd been negotiating for months. A massive infrastructure project that would have secured our position in the market for years to come. And now, somehow, Atlas Construction, our biggest competitor, had swooped in and taken it. That's when it clicked. The missing money, the timing, the sudden loss of the contract. Michael hadn't just been planning to take over the company. He'd been sabotaging our future projects. I immediately called James Harrison. "I need everything you can find on Atlas Construction's recent activities," I said without preamble. "Specifically, any new investors or board members." The answer came within hours. Atlas had recently welcomed a new silent partner, a holding company registered in the Cayman Islands, the same jurisdiction where Michael's mysterious transfer had landed. He'd been playing both sides, using inside information to position our competitors for success while weakening our own standing. It was brilliant in a twisted way. Even if I caught him stealing from Reynolds Construction, he'd have a golden parachute waiting at Atlas. But Michael had made one crucial mistake. In his arrogance, he'd forgotten who had written most of our contract proposals over the years. I knew every detail, every specification, every unique element we developed. I spent the next week buried in legal documents, working with our attorneys to build a case. When we finally moved, it was with surgical precision. Atlas Construction received our cease and desist letter on a Monday morning. By afternoon, their stock was in freefall as news broke that they'd used stolen proprietary information to secure the government contract. The evidence was irrefutable. Michael had handed them our confidential proposals, complete with innovative engineering solutions we developed. Solutions that were protected by patents. Patents in my name, not the company's. Victoria, who had been lying low since her disappearance, suddenly resurfaced with a vengeance. She stormed into Michael's apartment, their argument so heated that neighbors called the police. "You stupid, arrogant bastard," she screamed, according to witness statements. "You didn't tell me about Atlas. I could go to jail because of you." Michael, desperate to save himself, tried to pin everything on her. But Victoria had learned from my example. She kept her own records, documented every conversation, saved every email. The next day, she walked into the FBI's white-collar crime division and offered to turn state's evidence. Michael's world imploded spectacularly. Atlas Construction backed out of the contract, their reputation in tatters. The government launched an investigation into the bidding process, and Victoria, in exchange for immunity, provided authorities with everything they needed to prosecute him for fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. I watched from my office as federal agents led him out of his luxury apartment in handcuffs. He looked older somehow, his carefully maintained facade crumbling under the weight of his crimes. That evening, as I sat in my quiet house, I received an unexpected email from Victoria. "Sarah, I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but you should know that Michael never saw you coming. He genuinely believed you were too trusting, too weak to fight back. I believed it too. We were wrong." I didn't respond. Her words meant nothing to me now. Instead, I focused on rebuilding what they tried to destroy. Under my leadership, Reynolds Construction not only recovered but thrived. We secured the government contract legitimately, our innovative solutions earning praise from industry experts. The company's stock soared as investors gained confidence in the new management. Michael eventually took a plea deal, accepting a 15-year sentence rather than risk a longer term at trial. Victoria, true to form, landed on her feet with a consulting job on the West Coast. As for me, I sold the house, too many memories, and bought a modern apartment overlooking the city. On clear days, I can see the construction sites where our projects are taking shape, tangible proof that success is the best revenge. James Harrison joined me for dinner one evening, raising his glass in a toast. "To karma," he said with a grin. But I shook my head. To patience, I corrected, and to underestimated women everywhere. Sometimes I wonder if Michael ever realized that his greatest mistake wasn't the fraud or the affair or even the corporate espionage. It was forgetting who I was, not just his wife, but a woman who had helped build an empire from the ground up. A woman who knew every inch of the business he thought he could steal. The divorce was finalized quietly. I kept my married name, not for him, but because I'd made it my own. Reynolds Construction was mine now, truly and completely. In the end, Michael and Victoria's scheme had accomplished something they never intended. They freed me from the shadows, pushed me into the light where I belonged. They thought they were writing my ending, but instead, they'd only set up my beginning. Now, as I lead board meetings in the same room where they once tried to destroy me, I sometimes think about that day when they thought they had won. Their smug smiles, their absolute certainty in their victory. I've learned that true power isn't in the taking, it's in the building, the waiting, the careful preparation that others mistake for weakness. Michael and Victoria wanted a quick victory, a hostile takeover. What they got instead was a masterclass in patience, precision, and the danger of underestimating your opponent. The company's doing better than ever. Our projects are changing the city's skyline. Our innovations are setting industry standards, and our reputation has never been stronger. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's succeeding so spectacularly that those who tried to destroy you have to watch from the sidelines, powerless to do anything but witness your triumph. And that, as it turns out, is worth every moment of waiting.